We talked about tectonic plates and their movements. So we need to understand that tectonic plate movements lead to mountain formation. Now, what are the kind of tectonic plate movements? Of course, there are many, but primarily three important plate movements are there. When two plate movements side or traverse by each other, this is not much of interest to us because this at best would lead to, how should we say, earthquakes and related destruction, but they do not affect our river flow systems greatly. We will see that how. But the other two movements of the tectonic plate movement for sure affect how mountains are formed. So another way these tectonic plate movements is head-on collision. So you have one part of the tectonic plate coming this way, whereas the other tectonic plate is coming this way, and they're having head-on collisions. What happens when there is a head-on collision is, of course, the earth buckles, it folds, and it raises. So if you have these two tectonic plates coming, this is where they are buckling and it is being raised. And that is how these fold mountains are formed. And these mountains, the typical mountains are Himalayan mountains. Another way mountains are formed, or another way when the tectonic plate movements move, is that let us assume that these were together and this hot molten magma is pushing it from bottom. This is a single plate together, and this magma is pushing it. That is when there is a chance that this crust yields and it breaks completely. And since the magma is trying to push, the convection flow of magma is pushing up, it is facing the resistance of the crust. Obviously, its direction changes, and when the magma moves this way, it takes along with it the continent also. So when you have two flows like this, so these two continents break and they are taken away. But what happens when this breakage happens? So possibly if you are there at that point of breakage, when it is completely broken, it doesn't happen just like that in a day, could be hundreds of years. You would see that on the either side of left and right side of yours, you would see vertical cliffs of the crust exposed. Now, obviously, let us assume that this is the plate which is being pushed by the magma and is going this way. The force which is exerted at the point of the fissure obviously will be more than the force which is being exerted here. So, and hence, this plate, it's natural for it to be tilted. And when it tilts, the vertical cliff is designed, or when it was formed, is only it is able to hold itself when it is vertical. When that vertical cliff or the side is tilted like this, the top part obviously collapses, and what we see are these mountains, and these mountains are known as block mountains. And these block mountains, Sahyadri on the western coast of India, are a very typical block mountains. Now that we have studied the tectonic plate movements, what they are, the continental drift, how these tectonic plates move away from each other, and how they form mountains. These are the three concepts that we are going to use to decide how the river flow systems flow. Obviously, what is a river flow? River flow is nothing but water which is moving. If it is stationary, it is lake. If it is moving, it is a river. And these water obviously moves towards across a slope, across a gradient, from higher slope to lower level. And it's very difficult for us when we are talking about a land mass. When you have talking about a small space, you can easily find out what is the gradient, which way the river is going to move. But when you have a land mass which is as big as a subcontinent of an Indian plate, it's very difficult to find out gradient. So how do you find which way the rivers are going to flow? The best indications are the mountains itself. So obviously, when you have the Eurasian plate and when the India plate is coming and colliding, the India plate obviously gets lifted. When it is lifted, obviously there is a slope created, there is a gradient, and obviously the rivers will flow along the gradient. So we need to understand that when there is a head-on collision, the gradient is against the direction of the collision. And when there is a block mountain, when the block mountains are formed, when the continental is broken into two pieces, that is when you have the block mountains which are forming, and the plate itself is sloped, the rivers would be flowing along the breaking point. Now that we have studied the basic concepts and how the river flow systems affected, which plate should we take for consideration? As you had seen, there are so many tectonic plates to consider. Why consider only this India plate? One reason is familiarity. I, being an Indian, I know the river flow systems and the topography. And the other one is, you will see as we go across through these discussions, the factors which exist on this India plate are so conducive. If at all you could exploit these reverse flow systems, it's possible that the factors which help you to exploit them are existing on India plate. So let us study the landmass of India, and this is what the river flow system looks like. And this is how it is with the current times. As you can see, all of the rivers of India have two options to drain into. One is the Arabian Sea on the west coast, and another is Bay of Bengal on the east coast. And as you can see, majority of the rivers which are on the India plate are draining into Bay of Bengal. Arabian Sea has only 3 or 4 rivers draining into it. If not for the local features, even these rivers would have drained into the Bay of Bengal. And that is why Bay of Bengal is less saline as compared to Arabian Sea. That is because Bay of Bengal is blessed with all the fresh water which falls on this landmass getting drained into the Bay of Bengal every year. But that means that the general direction, whatever be the local direction, the general direction of the rivers is southeasterly. And so the gradient is as though northwest and southeast. Why is that?